Okay, this last portion of your course on conflict is intended to give you some more specific directions and guidance on two kinds of conversations that you're probably going to need the most help on. And that's going to be your alignment lane and hurt lane conversations, and more specifically in that tier 2 and tier 3 level. Now, as a reminder, because you're probably still learning all the different terms and definitions, alignments are conversations that are going to align you and your spouse on conflicting values, priorities, and principles. While hurt conversations are about sharing painful and difficult feelings in order to gain better understanding and resolution. Tier 2s are these emotionally intense conversations but aren't really conflicts between you and your spouse. And tier 3s are more messy, complex conflicts that happen directly between you and your spouse. So a simple way to remember them: alignments are about getting on the same page. Hurt lanes are about understanding and healing. Tier 2s are issues that have to do with other people and situations outside your marriage, and tier 3s are conflicts that happen within your marriage. So, since we've already covered clarity and emergency lane conversations as kind of your go-tos for safety and preventing unnecessary conflict in your communication, really the only areas that we're not going to cover in this course are tier 1s and problem solution lane conversations. And the reason is because you see, most couples already have these types of conversations quite often and easily. And so the thinking here is, if we can remove the complicating charge of misalignments and unresolved hurts by giving you better direction on those alignment and hurt lane conversations, then having tier 1 and problem solution conversations becomes a whole lot easier, making those kinds of conversations things that you can probably handle more intuitively on your own. So for this reason, I'll spend these last two chapters focusing more on those messy and complicated alignment and hurt type conversations. All right, let's start with tier 2s and why tier 2s are so important to have and why they're important enough for me to dedicate an entire chapter on just for them. Now first, let me go in a little bit more detail about what they are again. Now, when thinking of tier 2 level connections, think about the times that you and your spouse might have had talks about, say, stress at work, or conflicts with parents, or fears or anxiousness about maybe whatever is going on in life. These kinds of talks are basically tier 2s. They're emotionally intensive talks that don't have the charge of direct conflict. So, for example, as a therapist, pretty much all I do are tier 2 conversations. People will tell me about their issues, and most of them are emotionally intense, but rarely do they have anything to do directly with me. As a therapist, I'll spend about 10 to 15 hours a week on just having these tier 2 conversations. Now, the reason why they're so important is because, well, for one thing, they help build intimacy and connection between spouses. It's what you could call the low-hanging fruit. Just spending good time and connection in tier 2 space is a great way to develop a deeper sense of unity and understanding between husband and wife. Second, they can be great healing opportunities for various stressors and pain points in life. People come to see me as a therapist, and much of what they get as a benefit is the healing effects of simply connecting with me in tier 2 space. You see, being able to articulate your hurts to someone that can simply listen, understand, and empathize is incredibly restorative. Just being able to put into words your hurts in ways that you have never were able to before, and pinpointing it along with another person, sometimes that's all we need to heal and to feel whole again. And third, tier 2s are a great practice run for tier 3 conflicts. Doing tier 2 conversations require these emotional muscles that are absolutely necessary for these tier 3 conflicts. So let me give you an example. Let's say that you're a client of mine and you come in for counseling because you just want to talk to somebody to figure out an issue that you're going through. And you're pitching to me, say, this ball. Now, if you've processed and regulated your thoughts and emotions well, your pitch to me should be pretty clean. It'd be concise, precise, and vulnerable. You'd give me a BTF and maybe a narrative to go along with it. Something like, when my kids are struggling in school, it makes me feel like I'm not doing a good enough job as a parent, which makes me feel like makes me feel guilty and like I'm a failure of a parent, which is kind of a consistent narrative for me throughout my life, feeling like I'm never doing a good enough job and that I'm always failing at the things that are most important to me. See, that would be a great pitch because, for one thing, it's clear and it's easy to understand. And second, it's also vulnerable enough for me to connect empathetically with. But also, as your therapist, it has nothing to do with me. It's only tier 2 because your issue has nothing to do with me. All I have to do is catch and hold this ball for you. Just give you enough emotional space to talk things out and to work through your thoughts and feelings on the issue. Literally, all I have to do is hold this ball while you share with me. I mirror back to you, and I ask some questions to help with the understanding. I validate your experience and try to empathize as best I can. Doing those things means just holding this ball, nothing else. That's what tier 2 looks like. But tier 3 conflict actually adds another layer of complication. When you pitch an issue to me that has to do directly with me, that adds another component. I still have to hold this ball to create room for you to feel understood, but because it's an issue with me, I'll also have to hold my own defensiveness at the same time. Now, there's a good chance that your pitch actually causes me to have my own issue or ball to pitch back to you as well, making it really tempting for me to want to throw a pitch back to you or do what's called a collision. So now I'm having to hold or juggle 2, maybe 3 balls at once. In other words, if you can't handle the emotional weight of tier 2 conversations where all you have to do is hold a ball and understand your spouse, there's little chance of you being able to do tier 3 conflicts well when you have to do that along with a few other things at the same time. So the more resilient you are, the more balls you can hold or juggle at once. The more you can do that, the more room or space you have in a conflict to figure things out and to resolve issues. But since we're on this topic and I've got some props out, let's add some more depth and context to this example. So how about instead of throwing a clean pitch to me, you pitch a really messy and confused pitch, meaning you haven't regulated your emotions and thoughts much. So instead of pitching me something that's really easy to understand, you pitch to me something more like this, something that's all jumbled up and layered and complex. This is actually kind of how therapy works. People rarely come in to see me with things all figured out. After all, if they could, they really wouldn't need to see me to begin with. But my job, for all intents and purposes, remains the same. My job is to hold this cube, mirror back, ask questions, all that good stuff, while you as the pitcher try to figure it out. My resiliency has to increase in order to be able to hold this mess and complex communication that you're giving me. But if I can do that and help maybe give you another set of eyes and ears to look at this, you might be able to just hack this issue and solve this puzzle for yourself. So if you're great at processing and regulating your own thoughts and emotions, well, you can probably just pitch something more like this. But if not, you're probably going to pitch something that's a little bit messier, which means that if you're the catcher or if it's you that's catching something like this, then you have to be really good at being resilient to hold this well while you or your spouse tries to figure it out. But let's kick it up another notch again into tier 3. So if it's a fight between you and your spouse, and let's say that you're the catcher and your spouse has an issue with you, not only do you have to hold this cube while they figure it out, but you also have to hold and juggle your own cube as well. Now, it's super easy to divert your attention by focusing on your own issues and throwing this back to your spouse, but that's exactly how conflicts go bad. Couples don't know how to solve their own puzzles and just start throwing back and forth unprocessed, messy content, hurting each other more and adding more cubes along the way. Now, in an ideal world, you could pitch something maybe more like this to your spouse, a perfectly organized and clearly understandable issue. And in an ideal world, you could catch your spouse's messy pitch and help them to quickly turn it from something like this into something more like this, so that you can understand them and so that they can feel understood too. All while at the same time, you juggle or hold your own stuff as well in your other hand, and you're resolving it both so that by the time that you're done listening and catching your spouse, you have something well regulated and thought out to pitch back to your spouse when it's your turn. Now, that's in an ideal world, but realistically, that's like juggling 5 balls at once. So there are some people that can do that for sure, but most of us have a hard enough time juggling 2 balls, let alone 3. But with lots of practice, that can happen. But that's the idea here. These structures are designed to help you to get better handles on these balls or cubes or whatever you want to call them. But you still have to practice them in order to be able to learn how to handle them. But my hope here is that now that you know what you're dealing with and what's required to have these conversations and conflicts well, that you'll be more encouraged knowing that juggling and doing these things are actually possible. Maybe not perfectly, but certainly possible with lots of practice. Okay, I hope all that makes sense to you. There's a lot there to digest and understand, but I wanted to make sure that the further you get into this course, the better you can understand what these different tiers and lanes mean and how to navigate them. Now, as we get into these last two chapters, just remember it'll feel complicated and overwhelming at times, like you'll never get it. Much of like how it might feel to learn how to juggle 3 balls at once. But clearly, if you put your best effort in, you practice, you'll get better and better at it.